Hi, everyone. I'm meteorologist Eric Fisher. We have a doozy of a winter storm gearing up here. Now, we're still a few days out, so things will likely shift at least a little bit as we get closer over the course of the weekend. But as it stands right now, classic setup for a slow-moving big nor'easter. This one will be swinging for the fences. We'll call it Big Papi because it definitely has some warning track power. High pressure is building down out of Canada. That's your cold air source. Initially warm, where we're going to see some rain. But as the storm churns offshore, it's going to produce a lot of precipitation drawn out over a couple of days, and that is going to cause some major issues for us. Here's how it breaks down. We're likely going to see mostly rain toward Cape Cod and the islands, but we'll start with rain, then go into an icy mix and eventually snow around the Boston area and the rest of the coastline. That icy mix will change over to all snow across the interior as we head into Monday and Tuesday. Now, before we start to change over to some of that snow, some really unusually high precipitation amounts. And considering the snowstorm we just had, this is going to lead to already some flooding before we get into the winter aspect of it. We've got a swath of 2 to 4 inch rainfall around Boston into southeastern Massachusetts, some lesser amounts for inland areas before the switch. As for the snow, this will be heavy, wet snow to start, and then it will start to get a little drier as we go. The biggest total is likely going to be found inland, with the smaller amounts more toward the Cape and the islands where rain is going to dominate for most of it. We're also going to be watching the wind, and this could bring some very powerful winds to all of the area, blowing and drifting snow developing across the interior. Meanwhile, at the coastline, those strong northeast winds could gust up around 85 miles per hour. So power outages could be a risk, as well as coastal flooding. We're going to be eyeing the situation over the weekend. We'll keep you updated on what could be a very high impact event. Well, away we go with Big Papi. This nor'easter bringing some high impact conditions across the area. Still coastal flooding, one of our largest concerns. We already had one very high tide. Those northeast winds have coastal flood warnings up along all of the shoreline. You're going to get your inundation across all of the area and the splash over on all the coastal roads, and travel certainly discouraged as we go through multiple high tide cycles. We already had an extremely high tide earlier on this morning. As we head into the afternoon and the evening, now we're looking at record levels of water. So places like the seaport and getting into Chelsea, all the low-lying areas near the coastline, we're going to have some significant, if not unprecedented, levels of inundation. You want to avoid all these spots and, of course, any flooded out roadways, and heed any evacuation orders if they're listed. And over the next couple of days, still a number of very high tides that are just going to come down a little bit. And so this will be a long duration event. Also tracking some of those wind gusts coming in, the power outages starting to mount here. We had a 90-mile-per-hour gust in Chatham, Wellfleet gusting to 85, and a number of gusts between 70 and 85 miles per hour near the coastline. So this is going to be a storm to remember, and we still have a ways to go. Hello, everyone. Meteorologist Eric Fisher. I'll tell you what, it's not often you see a storm with this many different precipitation types in and around Boston. We started with the rain, now everything on ice, got up to an inch of ice accumulation. Even in the north end in downtown Boston, that ice accumulation is pretty notable, not something you often experience in the city. Now, we've upgraded the wind forecast here. We've already had very high gusts, and now it looks like gusts up to 100 miles per hour are possible, especially the exposed areas on the South Shore, Cape Cod, the Outer Cape in particular, and toward Nantucket. Obviously, winds like this, they're going to cause significant and long duration power outages. And even once you get away from the coast, we've got those winds that could exceed 55 miles per hour all the way west to the Worcester area. So be really cautious with generator use. I'm sure they're going to be in high demand over the next week or so. And the big problem here for a lot of the utility companies, look at the high temperatures behind this storm. Already the chills setting in, but over the next 5 days, staying below the freezing mark. Also dangerous for those without power who are trying to generate some heat if you don't have a wood stove or some alternative heating source. So make sure you're at least trying to check up on your friends and family here. But for all the utility crews, this is going to be a very difficult task. Oh, hello again, everybody. Thanks for keeping it here on Channel 4. You know, we are looking at some impressive snow totals considering the fact that we had so much rain and ice already, and then you put the snow on top of it. It is an absolute mess out there. So look at some of the amounts. Highest away from the immediate coastline, most towns coming in at 1 to 2 feet. A couple towns have actually exceeded 2 feet, including in Worcester and in Winchendon, and in Boston, 19 inches of snow so far out of this one, even right at the coastline. You look at February snowstorms, we've seen some of these higher precipitation events and these bigger snowstorms in recent years. If you look at the top 5 list, this has now made it onto the list, but all of them, for the most part, after 2000. So that blizzard of 78 is starting to get eclipsed by some of the weather that we have seen here over the last couple of decades. And this is going to be a pattern that is not going to be easy on us, but I do think there's some light at the end of the tunnel looking forward. We're going to talk about that as we get past this storm. But for now, a lot of shoveling to be done and a lot of power restoration to go. Well, the storm finally winding down, but this is one you tell your grandkids about because we are just inundated with rain, ice, the snow, the wind, the power outages. Here's the good news. We've gone through the worst of it. The cold starting to relent a little bit, and we talked about this pattern change in the offing. Things are starting to quiet down a little bit. That core of the cold, the dip in the jet stream, is moving more toward the western U.S., which for us means some moderating temperatures and some drier conditions on the horizon. Weather tends to do this. You get a big event, and then there's a snap back to the opposite, and things do quiet down. So we've gone through the worst storm we can remember, but it does look like there's a chance to recover here over the next 7 to 10 days.